You're watching News 24 Live. Welcome to our Rugby World Cup show on the eve of the Springboks' massive semi-final clash with the old enemy, the All Blacks. I've got Sport 24 chief rugby writer Rob Howing in studio to preview the game for us, then also just have a look ahead at the Argentina-Australia semi-final. Rob, one more sleep, and yes, you were saying off camera there's been a hell of a lot of build-up, a hell of a lot of trash talk. What have been some of the big talking points from this week?
Well, the teams have been sort of obviously falling over each other to sort of be kind and reverent to the other. But Steve Hansen finally hit the nail on the head when he said, enough of this sort of bonhomie. We know that the Boks want to rip our heads off, which was, I thought, quite a nice quote. We know he has a close friendship with Heineke Meyer, and there's talk of a sort of, the swap of beers that they have, which has been a little bit one-sided for the last few years. But Heineke hoping that he's the one downing a frosted lager more agreeably on Saturday. Sadly, I still hold the view I did for what I suppose would have been the last week and probably the last few months and even couple of years, really, that at the moment we have to suspect that this New Zealand team is better on paper than South Africa. I think even a lot of South Africans will be prepared to grudgingly acknowledge that. And, so we have to really take the view of sort of, the team with a puncher's chance. I mean, South Africa, we know, can be incredibly gritty, stubborn opponents. And if anybody is going to beat New Zealand at this tournament, then maybe it's still, you still think the old enemy, South Africa, are the ones who are capable of doing it. Especially if the game gets kind of slow and attritional, which is I pretty much think what the Boks will want. Let's live in hope rather than perhaps expectation.
Rob, before we look at some of the head-to-heads, what do the Boks need to improve on from last week? Or there was a sense that they weren't entirely happy with their performance against Wales. What do they need to do to beat the All Blacks?
Well, I mean, their game plan was unashamedly basic against Wales. It was almost more basic than it should have been, and they nearly lost the game as a result. I think the Boks they withdrew so much into their shells that you almost felt as if they were really reluctant to have a go at Wales. And let's not forget that Wales were fielding a team that was fairly significantly weakened. So the fact that the Boks had to wait until the 70-something minutes to finally bury them with that moment of magic that was required from two seasoned old hands in Duane Vermeulen and Fourie de Preer was perhaps a little bit disconcerting ahead of such a big match against the All Blacks. So look, there's no doubt, Nick, that the Boks are going to have to improve by several notches to do the business. First of all, their efficiencies have just got to be better. I thought that their line-out was a little bit sloppy at times. They tended to win their ball, but the quality of possession wasn't that sort of cohesive. It didn't really seem to work for them. There's also this issue of having sort of loose forwards, and particularly Skalkberger, often employed as the first receiver, basically taking over the fly-half's duty. So taking the supposed string puller, the key string puller in a side, roughly out of the equation. Which can be a little bit damaging, and it makes it almost easier for the All Blacks to plan against South Africa. So I do hope that South Africa are going to try and mix things up just a little bit more. Let's not forget that in the past, in the immediate past, in fact, South Africa have had some pretty crackerjack games against the All Blacks, where they've also come to the party with some quite good attacking play. So for all the talk about the what's expected to be a fairly pragmatic Springbok game plan, their capacity to surprise with ball-in-hand play shouldn't be completely, discarded. I think the South Africans, especially if we do end up getting a reasonably dry day, could come into their own and sort of go sort of toe-to-toe with the All Blacks in an attacking capacity. Not quite match them, but come pretty close. But from a forward point of view, I think the Springboks have got to dominate. That's an obvious, subject really, because if the South Africans can get good traction, it just improves their whole mojo, their whole belief, that the self-belief just soars if the Springboks are making big hits, if they're making good intrusions over the gain line, if people like Tendai Mtawarira, Duane Vermeulen are sort of busting the ball up. That sort of thing is what's going to just lift the Boks and make them believe that they can actually, crack this tough nut. So look, it is going to be won and lost up front. We are talking semi-final. I think that even the All Blacks will play a more of a percentage type game. I don't think that they're going to believe that they'll have the luxury of swinging the ball around willy-nilly. that may only happen towards the end if they are the side that sort of looks like they're sort of outdoing the box for stamina, and then things could turn a little bit nasty on the scoreboard. But I have pretty good confidence in the ability of the box to at least hang in there for the duration of the game, and not to actually sort of just sort of implode and for sort of floodgates to open. I'll be surprised if that happens, and frankly quite disappointed.
Rob, right, we've got some very enticing matchups here, head-to-heads. I'm going to ask you which one you're looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to that second row battle between Ebenezer Lutiaga and Brady Retallick and Sam Whitelock. You know, all four of them young, very promising lock forwards with a lot of grunt. Then, of course, you've got the fly half head-to-head, Dan Carter, Andre Pollard, the young versus the seasoned, legend of the game. The back three, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, it could depend on sort of go forward among the tight fives. I think the Springbok loose trio will come into their own if the box manage to get a bit of traction. I mean, Skalkberger's work rate has been absolutely immense. Dwayne Vermeulen is, after obviously a long layoff ahead of the World Cup, is building a very nice head of steam now. He's got very good game time under the belt and getting more and more effective. And this is a perfect occasion for a guy like him to do well in a game that sort of is decided by sort of, slow, hard-earned yards. Because if the game opens up, again, somebody like Kieran Reid, his opposite number, comes much more into his own from a mobility point of view and a linking factor. He's far more of a linking player than Dwayne is. Dwayne is far more the sort of the rugged, what you see is what you get, but still very classy number 8. So that obviously is going to be a key matchup. I mean, there are so many others to talk about as well. For instance, Dane Coles against Bismarck du Plessis. Some people are saying Dane Coles is the best hooker in the world at the moment. I think Mr. du Plessis might be sort of disagreeable on that front, and certainly would have had a strong case 2 or 3 years ago. Hasn't been at his best, and I always worry about him and French referees. So he could be sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit, but I still think he's a key part of the Springboks plan to sort of outgrunt New Zealand, if you like. And then look at the scrum halves. I mean, Aaron Smith against Farid Dupree, very different types of scrum halves. One more experienced than the other, but Aaron Smith probably the most, one of the most explosive, exciting scrum halves for his sort of sniping, breaking, again linking sort of playing. Farid Dupree, very much the game manager, the masterful character who knows, who just gets a sense of where things may be on, and he's also a big part in the Springboks tactical kicking game and so on. So that's also going to be a fantastic duel. And what about the wings? I mean, massively informed wings on both sides. We know that Julian Sevilla was totally on his game against France, quite scarily so. Looked like a new Lomu. And the Boks are going to have their work cut out. But I mean, why wouldn't you want JP Peterson and Brian Habana to be the guys out wide for South Africa? Because we know that they're defensively, they'll know exactly what they've got to do. They're both in very good form, Habana particularly. And of course, he's also chasing that one elusive further try to become the all-time Rugby World Cup try-scoring record holder. So plenty of incentive for him to want to get one of those little Habana intercepts or something as well. So I mean, look, there are one-on-ones across the park that are going to keep the punters engrossed for this one.
Prediction, Rob?
I have to say, head eclipsing
with
hearts.
your head. I want a head prediction and a heart one.
Look, you've got to say, just based on recent track record and so on, you've got to say All Blacks by perhaps 6 or 7. But let's not discount the Springboks completely.
And finally, your prediction for the Sunday game between the Wallabies and the Pumas?
Look, I've heard quite a few quite sort of knowledgeable punters leaning a little bit towards Argentina, which actually surprises me a bit. I think they've been wonderful at this tournament. I think they've almost sort of punched above their weight, but I'm not quite certain yet that they're actually able to beat an Australian team that's also very much on the up. I think Michael Checker has really almost revolutionised Australian rugby, and he's actually turned their pack into from a weak scrummaging force into a strong scrummaging force.
That's been a very decisive change.
They may well pretty much negate the effect of the Argentinian scrum, which is still a key focus area for them. So in what could be another tight game, I'd say Australia, possibly even by 8 or 9 points.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.